Hey, it's Eric G. Around the House is sponsored by Baldwin Hardware. For 75 years, Baldwin Hardware has been known for its first-class quality and craftsmanship in door and cabinetry hardware. As an alumnus of the Baldwin Hardware Design Council, I can say I have seen the details and quality from design to the finished product. If you're looking for a new style and old-world craftsmanship, I can tell you there is only one Baldwin Hardware. Check out what would look great in your home at baldwinhardware.com.
It's Around the House.
I was talking about the Mike Holmes stuff, and that gets interesting with how that all went down. And let me give you a little more detail on that. And I'll be first to say that, yeah, there is a ton of finger pointing here. But when it comes down to it, Mike Holmes, as somebody myself that runs my own brand, he pretty much got over his skis on this one, in my opinion, because I think they really made some big mistakes. From one, doing the jumping on the Terrace Wood website and sending a picture with Mike Holmes standing in front of it with his thumb out in front of a house that's going to get later torn down. Yeah, that could be a problem. And he was actually had a home in there as part of the deal. So he basically, I think, from my understanding from the stories, he actually got a free home and then turned around and sold it.
When it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is a lot to know, but we've got you covered. This is Around the House.
Welcome to the Around the House show, the next generation of home improvement. I'm Eric G. Thanks for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. If you want to find out more about us, head over to aroundthehouseonline.com. We've got social media out there. Make sure you follow us on Around the House Nation. We've got a closed group over there where people share up projects. I throw up some special stuff over there as well. And we're really going to be building that out this fall here as we go into fall and really be more inclusive. And what I like about it is so many groups on social media, when you post something up, maybe a project you're working on, this one is based on kindness. People that are rude, we boot them out pretty quickly. So here's the other thing. I only let in, I am the administrator on this. If you just started a Facebook profile 2 days ago, you're not coming in. I verify and take a look at each person coming in to make sure they appear to be a real person and they're not a bot or somebody in there that's just trying to troll and be rude. So there are a very limited amount of people coming in there that shouldn't be there. And we do a great job of policing to make sure that it is a kind place to get home improvement advice, and we make sure that it's accurate. And if you want to give us a call here, 833-239-4144. That number again is 833-239-4144. If you guys don't know about me, I have been doing Around the House Northwest television show. Geez, we're coming up to 80 episodes here, and we have been cranking along with the show. We got some new stuff coming up here. Stay tuned for that. We've got some big changes coming to the show, which is going to be great. I just can't wait to share them with you. Can't talk about it yet. I am sworn to secrecy, but some great new stuff coming up. So stay tuned to that. That's why you've noticed a few of the posts coming down a little bit, because we're gearing up for some exciting new stuff that I can't wait to show you. But today I thought I'd talk about, because my experience here with the show is I have learned a heck of a lot in 18 months or so of television of what goes on in home improvement TV shows, what happens behind it. And today I wanted to give you some secrets of what goes on. Some might be secrets, some might not be, but I really wanted to give you an idea of how this stuff goes and the challenges of many of these hosts. And of course, what's real and what's not. And some of the trouble that some of these shows have gotten into by maybe getting caught doing things that maybe like they weren't supposed to. So we're going to talk about that in this hour today. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is there are a lot of shows out there, a lot of them. Now, you've got stuff on Discovery Networks. You've got stuff which would be HGTV, Magnolia Network. And of course, you have all these shows on streaming networks. And of course, you got on This Old House or Ask This Old House on PBS and all of that. And they're the exception to most of this. And let's talk about This Old House for a minute. And I have a high regard for these guys, so I have nothing bad to say about what they're doing over there. It is the original home improvement show out there, way before there were anything on TV of this magnitude. This Old House came in Boston and really changed how people look. And that was really such an amazing time back then. in the really late 70s, where you had home improvement, cooking, what later would become their own channels as that evolved in television. They had Julia Childs, they had This Old House, they had all these different things going on that were really groundbreaking, and they were so far ahead of their time. My hat is off to them for being the trailblazers for the entire industry. But here's the thing I want you to take a look at. This Old House is so much different because, one, they're a public broadcast, which means you don't have advertisers. So if you look at This Old House, they always have a different contractor in a different home because that is a real contractor and that is a real homeowner and a real construction project with a real budget that's happening. And so what happens is they're actually applying to be there, and 99% of the materials going in there, that homeowner is decided on. And of course, they're paying for. And that's the big thing right there. This is not a big sponsored thing. And it's got to be hard to do that because they are really having to navigate through public broadcasting and those rules of not having advertisers to do that. So that's why you don't see another This Old House out there, because it really couldn't be done any other way without changing the format. And it's such a legacy show, and it's something that's been out there forever. I think hats off to all the guys over there and its continued success as they continue to evolve as TV and streaming and everything else changes. They've had some ownership changes out there, and there's a lot of new things happening with them, and hats off to those guys. So nothing bad to say about This Old House. I know the guys over there, and a great group of craftspeople, and they are always out there showing the greatest and best stuff out there, mixed in with some good old school ways of doing it, which I love. So that is one thing. Now, when you take a look at other shows out there, you have house flipping shows, right? Now, these house flipping shows are interesting because many of them are part of the house flip that these people are doing. So many times these house flippers are not craftspeople. They are real estate people that have gotten into the house flip. Many of these house flip shows are created to create drama, and they're very much like creating reality TV, and something has to go bad. Something has to go sideways. Are we going to save the budget? Oh no, can we sell the house for this? And 90% of the time they do. And so these are the things that we really got to be careful with out there, because many of these are not very realistic. And a lot of the work being done on the house flipping shows that you see out there over the years is not the right way to do it. And they're taking way too many shortcuts, as a lot of the house flippers do. So that's something to consider, that with house flipping shows, they are trying to do it the cheapest, most beautiful way they can, because that's what a lot of the house flippers do. Are there exceptions? Yes, there are plenty of good house flippers out there that are doing the right thing, that are really helping people out by taking a house and getting it back on the market to be something cool. So that is something that you really should pay attention to. But a lot of these programs like zombie house flipping and those kind of things that you see on some of these other networks are created not for home improvement content, but to give you a story that's filled with drama. So I'm not here to bash it on a single show for any reason, but that's just the outlook of this. Now, here's the thing. You also take a look at this before we go out to break and think, man, these people, I want to be on and have my own HD TV show or my own Discovery show or whatever that is. Here's the thing. Many of these people are not making a ton of money. I have had friends that had their own HD TV show. I've got a lot of friends that have had them. Some of them were only making $500 an episode, so they were making $500 a week. And I know many hosts of HD DIY network shows back in the day that almost lost their business, almost lost their house, because they had to stop doing what they were good at, being a contractor or a woodworker or a house restorer or whatever they were working on to get into this. And the time that it took to film it almost tanked their living by doing it. So there's an extreme risk via reward with this. Now, the house flippers have had a good thing going because they could continue flipping houses and continue to make money, and they built a brand for themselves. So this was one of those things that worked out really well for them because they could continue working. where other contractors, they couldn't do it like this old house. They still had Mrs. Smith's bathroom remodel they were doing or whatever. And that's where that stuff got tough. So that is where these things go. But if you think that you are going to be the next Chip and Joanna Gaines and make millions of dollars, the amount of effort that takes in the amount of decades that it takes to get there, it takes 7 years probably of a perfect situation to make that happen. I'll tell you more just as soon as Around the House returns. So go ahead. Hey, it's Eric G from Around the House. Are you tired of low quality water in your home? Do you have bad tasting water? How about chemicals, minerals, and hard water scale tearing up your bathrooms, appliances, and your water heater? I have a great solution for you. It's time you stop the damage and check out King Water Filtration. This water treatment system takes care of every drop of water that comes into your home. It uses no salt, no expense filters to change, and it's made right here in the USA. Plus, it prevents hard water scale. To find out more information, head to kingwaterfiltration.com, and if you use promo code ERIC-23, it will give you $1,000 off MSRP with a discount on a filter that will resolve those water quality issues. Don't miss out on this amazing sale on a product made right here in the USA at kingwaterfiltration.com. That's kingwaterfiltration.com. And don't forget promo code ERIC-23. Hey guys, it's Eric G, and I have a special offer for you. Do you want to get the podcast a couple days early? How about extended content that isn't in the typical podcast? Maybe you want to check out all the back episodes of the show. And I got a special deal for the month of August. The first 10 days are free. I want to personally invite you to be an Around the House insider. For about $4 a month, you can get exclusive extended episodes, early access to the weekend show, and exclusive access to me, Eric G, for project questions or comments. Check on the link on your podcast player in the show notes, or head to aroundthehouseonline.com and look for the join here button. Make sure and sign up today because this special deal only goes through the month of August. As always, thanks for tuning in to Around the House.
What's up? This is Sticks Adenia.
And Satchel from Steel Panther. And you are listening to
Around the House with Eric G.
Yeah.
We love Eric G, and you should too.
Welcome back to the Around the House show, the next generation of home improvement. Thanks for joining me today. If you're just joining us on the radio, thanks for tuning into the show. If you want to find out more about us, head over to aroundthehouseonline.com. And if you want to give us a call in the studio with your home improvement question, you can send us a message at the website or 833-239-4144. That number again is 833-239-4144. We've been talking about here behind the scenes of home improvement shows and what you're seeing out there. And this gets interesting when you start taking a look at how these shows work, because they're their own business, right? They've got to create content that comes up, so they get advertisers, and that's really how home improvement television works. And so there's many ways of doing it. And so we were talking about earlier about how the house flip shows are flipped, and that's really the big thing, is they're working off that host's budget for that house flip. Now, the other way that you see house flip shows actually pay for production, and so the production company makes money as well, is that you'll see what I call product placement. What is that? Well, let's say you're watching Extreme Home Makeover on what was ABC, I think at the time, and you see the Craft-Made truck back up and start delivering cabinets. The difference there is Craft-Made probably paid for that, as well as gave the products that showed up in the show. So they gave away a kitchen cabinet package or a house cabinet package, and then paid so much money to have that baked into the show as an advertisement. And that, of course, is how they made money. So you'll see that from time to time. When you see that on network television shows, that's really how that works. So if you walk into a Caesar Stone countertop location at a showroom in Caesar Stone or another tile company or one of those out there in that house flip show, those guys probably paid for that, because otherwise you wouldn't see the brand there in that. So if you see a brand name, they're probably involved somehow. Now, my show, it's a little bit different. I'm just going to tell you the honest truth about it. Many times, since we are a locally produced show, not a big network show, they don't actually go after that. So they don't have people out there trying to have product placement in my show. So many times if I get a piece donated and we're going to test it out, that's great. Now, when I do my test it's on Amazon, for instance, where I'm testing Amazon products, I'm actually buying those pieces and I get reimbursed by the station for that. But here's the thing. I'm testing those things and Amazon's not paying a dime for that. But I'm testing to see if these knockoff products look like they're going to work. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they work absolutely horrible. Sometimes you'll see me putting on gloves and safety gear because I think they could actually hurt me when they fail. And that's gotten pretty close sometimes where I'm like, whoo, that was close. And things like that happen. But my show's a little bit different than that because it's not an HDTV show. It's not a DIY network. It's not a Magnolia or what became Magnolia or one of these others. They're just not working it that way. So I've got a lot more freedom in my show compared to bigger network shows, which is great. So many times those products there were sent to me, or I ended up asking for them to send it to me so we could do something on it and do just that. But at the end of it, we have to put in, to keep it legal, to make sure that we show people that we got stuff for that. We have to put in a promotional consideration so people know, hey, this was a product that was paid for, something like that. And you can always see that at the end of my television show because that's where we put it. So people can see these pieces were donated or were given at a reduced cost. That's just how that works. So take a look at product placement. That's where, if that was in there because that's their favorite, or if it's in there because, well, on these more network shows, what you see out there. Now, here's a big one that I want to talk about right here. And this has been a serious subject. And there has been a lot of controversies in home improvement television shows that you have to take a look out for, because there have been a lot of things that have happened out there where these TV show hosts got nailed. They got busted. They got nailed for doing something that got them in trouble. And that's the problem when you are maybe taking shortcuts on some of this stuff, is that there are things out there that, especially with the government, like the EPA, for instance, they can get you hard. And so let's talk about some of these controversies that we saw where hosts got into trouble or production companies got into trouble for not following the rules of renovation. Here's one here that's from the EPA.gov site. So this isn't some crazy TMZ thing. This is a press release. EPA settlement addresses contractors' actions on renovation TV show violating the lead-based paint rules. Mars Construction Company will pay penalty and raise awareness of lead-safe work practices through home improvement programming. So this was on January 22nd of this year. Today, the U.S. EPA announced a settlement agreement for Mars Construction of Bella Vista, Arkansas, addressing the company's violation of the lead renovation, repair, and painting rule. Under the settlement, Mars agrees to provide information about lead safety rules on its cable TV program, Fixer to Fabulous, on the HGTV network and through Mars social media sites. They're also going to pay a $35,000 civil penalty. And they have been really going through and watching these shows and nailing it. And what happens is these companies, or they start working on a pre-1978 home, and that has a chance of having lead paint in it. This is one of those things where they got nailed for a lot of money and had to go through and deal with that. And so they will have to go through and make sure that they're following those lead-based paint rules that are federal and EPA. So that was one instance right there, actually two, where they got in there and got nailed for violating that program. So that's an expensive one right there. Now, the other one that's come up here recently, and this is one that I did a story on a little bit earlier this year, and this one was like, wow, this was a big one up in Canada. So Mike Holmes from Homes on Homes and all of his different do-it-right programming, as you want to call it, out of Canada, got absolutely nailed in the press. And here's a story from CBC out of Canada. CBC investigates. Their title, Mike Holmes approved homes demolished due to alleged defects. Consumer watchdog Terion condemned 3 homes in a housing development endorsed by celebrity Mike Holmes. And this was out of January 29th is when this was going on. They show a large excavator tearing through a modern house in Meaford, Ontario. Sorry if I said that wrong, Ontario people up there. Picturesque community on Georgian Bay. Occupied for just 2 years, the home's once soaring ceilings, big windows, and backyard patio are demolished into crushed glass and wood. 3 homes are slated to be torn down here. The demolitions of the latest chapter of the saga of Terrace Wood, a housing development launched in Meaford in 2015 to much fanfare. The boutique subdivision of houses was built by Third Line Homes and endorsed by celebrity contractor and, of course, popular TV host Mike Holmes. Mike Holmes is famously known for rescuing homeowners from botched construction jobs. He promoted Terrace Wood, including as on a billboard as Holmes approved homes. So it said Third Line Homes approved homes are built with innovation, integrity, and commitment to make it right, Holmes said on a promotional YouTube video. So they have had some problems with this. These homes were poorly constructed. It was cheaper to tear them down than to fix it. Given the nature of the defects discovered in the houses, demolition was a more reasonable option than repair, Terrian spokesperson Andrew Benishi said in an email. Pretty crazy. Around the House will be right back. We'll talk more about this just as soon as we return. Don't go anywhere. Hey, it's Eric G from Around the House. Are you tired of low quality water in your home? Do you have bad tasting water? How about chemicals, minerals, and hard water scale tearing up your bathrooms, appliances, and your water heater? I have a great solution for you. It's time you stop the damage and check out King Water Filtration. This water treatment system takes care of every drop of water that comes into your home. It uses no salt, no expense filters to change, and it's made right here in the USA. Plus, it prevents hard water scale. To find out more information, head to kingwaterfiltration.com, and if you use promo code ERIC-23, it will give you $1,000 off MSRP with a discount on a filter that will resolve those water quality issues. Don't miss out on this amazing sale on a product made right here in the USA at kingwaterfiltration.com. That's kingwaterfiltration.com. And don't forget promo code ERIC-23. Hey guys, it's Eric G from Around the House Show. We'd really appreciate your help with some awesome 5-star reviews on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you tune into your podcast. Big thanks everyone, and a shout out to our dedicated listeners of Around the House.
Hey, this is Ron Keel, the Metal Cowboy from Keel, the Ron Keel Band and Steeler. We are rocking Around the House with Eric G.
Raise your fist, make your stand.
Welcome back to the Around the House Show, the next generation of home improvement. If you're joining us on the radio, thanks for tuning in. We've been talking about behind the scenes of home improvement shows and everything from what you don't see and the little things that happen behind the scenes. And before I get back into the controversies that we were talking about before we went out to break, I wanted to talk a little bit more about how these shows get filmed. And for instance, my show, a great example, and I can talk about it because I'm there for all of it. It's one of those things that time is of the essence. So we do a 1-hour show each week, which is 42 minutes, not counting the commercials and all the other stuff that's in there. So we have to come up with 42 minutes of show content a week. Now that's finished. Great example. Last year, I did the outdoor pizza oven. Now, what we filmed was about 20 hours of the work, but that made about 7.5 minutes of content. So you can start to see how big a pull this can be on some of these projects. And it gets pretty crazy trying to capture it all and give you a step-by-step because we all got to be there for that. And then to condense it down so you get the most stuff. So it's not some 20-minute boring segment for a lot of people that don't care that much about that subject. So we're trying to be a lot to everyone. Where the challenges occur with trying to do this is that we don't have time to sit there and wait for things to dry sometimes. Great example. A few weeks ago, we did a segment on finishing drywall. We put mud on. I could have sat there and made this a lot longer, but time is of the essence. So I took regular mud, put it on, taped it. Usually I'm going to let that dry for 24 hours, depending on what happens out there with the weather, the humidity, the heat, that kind of stuff. And then you do your next coat, sand it, do your next coat. You get the drift. But for mine, I had 20 minutes to do it. That's just how it works in production. So put a coat on there, put another coat over the wet, and put another coat over the wet. You can imagine that was starting to get pretty thick. It doesn't look the best. And I have no problem taking the hate from the haters of, oh, it's not looking very good. Of course, it's not looking very good, but I'm still showing you how to do it. It's nearly impossible to do that over one coat drywall so it looks perfect at the end because there's no base for it to dry behind. So it gets pretty tough. Are there people out there that do it? Yeah, but it's going to take a week to dry or more, and then it's going to crack out and look bad anyway. And it's not the right way to do it. However, sometimes we have to do that to get you the information in a timely manner, only because there's only so much production time. So we end up doing that. Sometimes I'll have to make 2 or 3 different pieces so I can show you. Instead of letting it dry, I've already built one that's drying, and that way we can sit there and do it. And that creates a lot of time savings on the shooting side of things. But there's a lot to think about. And I will say it was really cool. In almost 80 episodes, not once have I had to run to the store to get something. We had everything there needed. So I thought that was a pretty good run there so far, knock on wood, that we didn't have to run and go get more materials. We made it work. And that's a little inside on the TV show stuff. And that's what gets interesting. So we were talking about the different controversies here. And when I went out to break, I was talking about the Mike Holmes stuff. And that gets interesting with how that all went down. And let me give you a little more detail on that. And I'll be first to say that, yeah, there is a ton of finger pointing here. But when it comes down to it, Mike Holmes, as somebody myself that runs my own brand, he pretty much got over his skis on this one, in my opinion, because I think they really made some big mistakes. From one, jumping on the Terrace Wood website and sending a picture with Mike Holmes standing in front of it with his thumb out in front of a house that's going to get later torn down. Yeah, that could be a problem. And he was actually had a home in there as part of the deal. So he basically, I think, from my understanding from the stories, he actually got a free home and then turned around and sold it. So he had a lot to make with this. Now, what's funny is out of those homes, he didn't actually sell one of the packages that was, okay, if you want to pay extra, I'll make sure this is a Mike Holmes approved home. And he made the money off of that. Who's going to pay extra for that? I don't think anybody would. And in this situation, nobody did. So they didn't buy the upgrade inspection package, which tells me that's crazy. And then he claims as well afterwards, he had absolutely no access to any of the residences in the project, from their design to their installation and construction. Even though he has a home, that tells me he didn't show up and take a look at it, in my opinion. So I think that's where the issue is, that he represented to these people that, hey, these are amazing homes. You should buy one. Here's my face. Here's my likeness. Do all this stuff. And he stood in front of the homes, did a video on it, all this cool stuff. And he got nailed on that. So that's a pretty big one there. There's still court hearings coming out on this thing. It's really ugly, but this is a black eye for him in that he's the one out there talking about bad builders. And like many people that did, he got snuck up in that. Now, I think the good thing out of this is I think this is a pretty good model here. I like that Ontario as a government decided to create their own guarantee for homeowners, Tarion, which was established by the Ontario government to help ensure defects were discovered in new homes still under warranty or repaired. I think that's amazing. I think that's not a bad thing there to have something backing homeowners up. There's so many homes, if you watch some of the inspection sites and stuff, that don't get caught, that end up being that way, that can be a huge problem for people. So I'm cool with that part of it. But yeah, sorry, Mike Holmes fans out there. In my opinion, he got over his skis on this one. And if you look up in Canada, he has got his name on just about everything. And I got a feeling that nobody was managing that correctly. And that's my opinion. So we'll see what happens and how that plays out. But he's got his brand around houses getting torn down that weren't able to be fixed. And that's not a good look for him or the TV network. Now, as far as controversies go, I'm not going to dive into the Cosmopolitan magazine story like of Tarek Elmas and Christina Hack from the Flipper Flop stuff. That's just, everyone's tired of hearing that. If you don't know what that is, Google it. That's just been ugly since day one. And it's a good example on that. If you watch their early shows of Flipper Flop, you could tell that he has absolutely no construction experience, because they would put him in situations as the production team. They would put tile in his hand and have him put the tile on the shower like he's sitting there in his $1,000 shoes trying to put on tile. And you could tell this clearly, he has never put a piece of tile on the wall. So that stuff is just where they're playing around with the hosts that have no construction experience. And unfortunately, I don't like her style as a designer. I'm a trained designer. I'm a certified designer. She calls herself a designer. Anyone can sit there and call themselves a designer. I just don't think she's very good at it. And like many people, she has one style that is her style, and she's good at doing her style, but she is definitely not what I would call a accomplished designer in my eyes. Another one that was really big was the drama around Windy City Rehab. And this again comes down to corners getting cut in the wrong places. And this is where issues come up. So Windy City Rehab had an issue here, and this was a big one. So they got stop work orders in the city of Chicago. It took a while for them to resolve it, and they did get these things resolved, but the stars were blocked in a midsummer, I think, from filing work permits by the city, which issued a bunch of stop work orders. And that really put the series in jeopardy because it's all about restoring Chicago homes. They got really hung up, and that ended up being a really big issue. And during the hiatus, Allison Victoria Gramenos appeared in the HDTV competition Rock the Block. So that stuff did work its way out. But whew, that got to be really, really ugly. And that was a problem. That was a big problem for them and all of that. Now, if you've watched House Hunters, when we come back, we're going to talk about that one. And I like the show, but let's talk about what happens on that show that you probably didn't notice. And this is a big one here. And if you go fill out an application for the show, which I noticed when I did it, this showed you what actually happens on the show. And it'll be interesting to find out. Around the House, we'll be right back after these important messages. Don't go anywhere. Hey guys, it's Eric G, and I have a special offer for you. Do you want to get the podcast a couple days early? How about extended content that isn't in the typical podcast? Maybe you want to check out all the back episodes of the show. And I got a special deal for the month of August. The first 10 days are free. I want to personally invite you to be an Around the House insider. For about $4 a month, you can get exclusive extended episodes, early access to the weekend show, and exclusive access to me, Eric G, for project questions or comments. Check on the link on your podcast player in the show notes, or head to aroundthehouseonline.com and look for the join here button. Make sure and sign up today because this special deal only goes through the month of August. As always, thanks for tuning in to Around the House.
All right. The band is drunk, it's the end of the show. Now drinking down, people, it's time to go. It's that time again, it's last call.
Welcome back to the Around the House show, the next generation of home improvement. Thanks for joining me today. We've been talking about behind the scenes of home improvement shows and the stuff that you see out there. And we've been talking about recently here some of the controversies and all of that. And I wanted to tell this story here because I actually years ago applied to go on this show, or started to, and went, oh, wow, that's weird. It's not what I was thinking, because I was thinking about moving. And this is before Julie and I, so this is way back when. But I had jumped online, went onto the production company, I think that's their website, and I applied to be on House Hunters. And that's the show where you go on there and you have to pick out 3 homes and take a look, and the real estate agent takes you around, shows you those, and then at the end you reveal which one you picked. Jumping on, filling out the application, to be even thought about in the application, you had to have a house in at least escrow or ready to close, which means you had already bought a house in the meantime. So my game when I watch the show, and I still watch the show, I understand what it's about, and that's okay. I'll watch the show and try to guess by body language of which house that they had actually bought. And that's a fun game to play with that show because there's still fun seeing shows and seeing that. And you just have to know that they had to own a home before they filmed the show so they could get in it. And again, this comes down, now I'm not saying the show's a fake, even though it is. They're presented that to you. You don't know the difference. But I think what it comes down to is production schedules. And when you see it from the other side, it's fascinating because you're looking at it going, oh, geez, I can't believe they're faking that. They can't come back and fly back, bring a crew back out again just to film the wrap on it from 2 months ago, 3 months ago. It's just not an effective way to do TV production. So that's how they force the issue and make a show out of it. So I get it. I'm not faulting them for it, but it does take a little bit of the shine off the show when you first look at it going, oh man, really? They're not actually looking? They're looking, but they already have a house that they fell in love with enough to put an offer on and get it accepted and have the escrow thing down. So that's just what it is. So something to think about when you're looking at HGTV shows. There are some of these shows that I get on and I'm watching on the house flip shows that I am literally screaming at the television going, I feel bad for the people that are buying this house, from cutting out structural members to run plumbing to all the different issues that you see on these television shows. Because man, some of these things, now I will say some of these shows, and I'm not going to say which ones because we're not going to get into that here, but some of these shows I think are produced in areas where building permits or lack of building permits is the law, where we don't have to pull a permit for remodeling. Now, there are some places that are still like 1925 in the country where you don't have to pull permits for things. It's the wild, wild west. That stuff happens. And there is something there that would make me very nervous buying a house in one of those areas because you just don't know what has happened to it. And so when you see that, you go, wow, okay, how does that work? To me, that's a little scary. Now, there are TV shows that do a great job of this and work with local and state agencies to make it happen, like the Extreme Home Makeover guys. They would pay and they would have a building inspector on site because things were happening so fast. They basically paid to have somebody 24/7 there that could inspect things as they went along, to stamp it, move it, cover it. Because if the wiring's done and the drywall guys are coming in right after the insulation guys and wiring's done and in 2 hours you got to have drywall up, guess what? You have to have somebody there that's doing the inspections. Now, I wasn't a big fan of those homes because I thought realistically of that show, Extreme Home Makeover. My issue is things didn't have chance. They didn't have a chance to cure, dry, to get flooring, didn't have a chance to get acclimated. There is so much moisture trapped in one of those homes when you're building it because nothing really has a chance to dry. You've got drywallers coming in that are doing the hot mud. Well, hot mud's great. It's set up. It's still jam-packed full of moisture because it hasn't dried out yet. But unfortunately, that's stuck in the wall. You've got concrete that even though it's hard enough to walk on, good enough to build on, that you still have issues with that releasing moisture for the next few months. So to me, I always thought that those homes were a little bit sketchy in that just the amount of moisture coming off of things, nothing gets a chance to dry. And there's no way around it. You could put paint in there and okay, it's got to dry in 2 hours and all of a sudden furniture's going in the room and they're done. So I looked at it and went, boy, it is a recipe for mold in those homes. And I don't know if that happened or not, but it was my fear looking at those homes. As well as, boy, I tell you what, I came in later on a couple of them and saw some major issues. Now, a few of the homes that I saw that got really expensive were ones that Craft Made Cabinetry had done, and they had done a thermofoil door, which is that PVC/vinyl wrap that is shrunk wrap around the doors. The moisture and the water-based glue that held it on, because they used to use good old-fashioned, your typical contact cement for that stuff. It worked really well. The new water-based stuff didn't work as good, and you put that in a moist house, all of a sudden, all the plastic started coming off all the doors, and they had to go in and replace on some of these homes all of the doors on the project because of how they looked and how they were accepting that moisture because it's just MDF behind it. So there were a lot of issues there. I saw one house that I went in afterwards that had a lot of cracks in it, and from drywall to, it was just poorly done. It was not a quality workmanship job because they had to do it fast and good enough for TV. And so those are things that happened. And when you're on a production schedule, I've had to do that as well. I did my first HD TV show that I was on. And if you want to go out and find it, you can find it out there. It was Designer Finals, and my friend Brianna was the designer. I was the design expert. We filmed it in Denver, Colorado. And I think it was season 2 of that show. And working with the production company. And the background of that show was you had these designers. The producers wanted me to sit there and make it so I would make her cry. She was a college student, just graduated design school, and they were telling me to go in and make her cry so they could get the rap on that. And I was a professional, she was a professional, and a personal dear friend at the time. And guess what? There was zero chance that I was going to do that. Now, I came in and said, hey, we're not going to meet the schedule because of these things. That stuff happens, but that's okay. The bigger issue was that when we got in there, we started doing the show. They didn't realize that we had less time. So we were told we had 48 hours to do this design. So we planned on 14-hour days. They didn't tell us that was 2 8-hour days. So we had to really cut the project back because we had scaled it for something completely different. And I think that was part of the deal, was to really get it so you didn't make it on time. They wanted to make it so it was pushed. And we were so pushed that I was putting the clear coat on the entertainment center as we carried it in, and was doing touch-ups on it, and had to cut out little paper pieces to set the home entertainment stuff on it because they wanted me to set their receiver and everything in the wet finish. And I'm like, not doing it. So I cut out cool little black pieces of plastic to set down on it, so at least the legs wouldn't get adhered to the cabinet. But these are the stuff that happened with that. So you got to be careful with some of these shows. That's just how it goes. And again, I'm not out here bashing, but I just wanted to give you some inside things of what I've seen and what happens on these shows, because I think they're great shows. I watch these shows. I have to watch them, one, to see what's in there, what's hot, what's not. And there's some out there that are really successful. Hats off to Chip and Joanna Gaines for the empire they built. And that's really hard to do with TV networks. And what they did was incredibly remarkable. So I have to give them that. And some of these other shows, yeah, there's ones I like, there's ones I don't. A lot of the ones on HDTV, they're okay. They're okay. Some of the ones I don't like, the zombie house flipping, kind of some of those, what I'd call the A&E network ones, I think those have already been done. There's nothing new. It's created drama. And to me, I think those are really tired shows. And they're definitely like the gallon of milk that's been in your fridge 2 weeks too long. They're definitely past their expiration date. And I think people have gotten tired of that and have moved on. So there's a lot better stuff out there. I want to see us get back to more designer-friendly shows on television, some more skills shows that show people how to do it. But it's kind of like MTV when they went to the real world stuff and they quit playing videos. Are we going to get back to really learning about good building, good design? Or is all this reality television stuff that we see, is that going to be the wave of the future and be like MTV? Everybody's wishing for the old videos that grew up with those in the 80s and 90s when they actually used to be music television. All right, guys, that's my rant on behind the scenes and home improvement shows. I hope you learned something out of that. Enjoy your shows out there. I'm not trying to talk you out into watching them. I just wanted to give you a little inside baseball on what I see out there. And I know I made some people in production companies mad by doing this. Something I wanted to get the facts out to you so you understand how these shows look. I'm Eric G. Thanks for tuning in to Around the House. We'll see you next Wednesday on the podcast, our midweek update, or we'll see you next weekend on the radio show and podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Around the House. Hey, it's Eric G with Around the House. Are you looking to grow your business? Need a spokesperson for your company? Maybe an MC for an upcoming trade show, or maybe you want to up your game and shoot some promotional videos. My team of experts would love to chat with you. Head to aroundthehouseonline.com and fill out the contact us form, and we'll set something up. Thanks for listening to Around the House.